Okay, good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning here today. Supervisor Bates is going to lead us in the invocation this morning, if we could all stand, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Jerning, Reverend Jernigan is here. Didn't think you were going to make it, sir. Sorry about that.
I'm just sitting here minding my own business. Let's pray this morning. God our Father, Lord, thanking you for this opportunity, Lord, to pray for these men and women, the Culpeper County Board of Supervisors. Second, Lord, I want to remind us all that these men and women are here by divine appointment. That God, that the powers that be are ordained of God. We are commanded to pray for them. We are commanded, oh God, to submit as well. So, Father, we ask you this morning that, Lord, that you would endue them with power and ability and wisdom. That, God, that the decisions they will make are what is best for the people of Culpeper County and not for themselves. We thank you, O Lord, and acknowledge that you are God. And we thank you, O Lord, for this opportunity to put you in your rightful place, but also, O God, that there is a recognition of your existence. So, Father, bless these men and women. Give them your strength. For God, we ask it all in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Jernigan. Pastor Jernigan is with the Open Door Baptist Church, and I haven't met him before, so I didn't know he was here. The last message I got, that you weren't going to be here. So, but we'd like to go ahead and open up, officially open our August 1st Board of Supervisor meeting for the morning session, and I'll ask Supervisor Rosenberger if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have an agenda before us. Any additions, deletions to the agenda, or a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, next is the consent agenda, and I'll turn this over to our County Administrator, John Eggerston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. We have 4 items on consent agenda this morning. Under item A, the board will consider approving a resolution requesting VDOT to accept the subdivision streets in the Lilybrook subdivision into the secondary system of state highways. Under item B, the Board of Supervisors will consider a resolution to adopt a personal property tax relief rate for 2023. The relief rate percentage related to personal property tax bills for FY24 calendar billing year 23 will be 23%. Under item C, the board will consider acceptance of a donation and a budget amendment in the amount of $4,500 for the Parks and Recreation Department. The funds were received from the Culpeper Pickleball Club. And under item D, the board will consider acceptance of a grant and approval of a budget amendment in the amount of $16,500 for the Parks and Recreation Department. The funding was received from UVA Community Health.
Okay, thank you, John.
Move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, approval of the minutes. Any changes to the July 5th, 2023 AM or PM meeting minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We have 2 items of general county business this morning. The board will discuss and consider adoption of a resolution commending the Rapidan Regional Commission on its 50th anniversary, which is a great thing. I've been involved with the commission myself and worked with Patrick Monty quite a bit. Patrick, if you would come up. I think, John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to read this resolution into the record. It's a resolution commending the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission on its 50th anniversary. Whereas in 1966, the General Assembly created the Metropolitan Area Study Commission, which found that a holistic approach to solving local and regional problems needed to be taken. The commission recommended a new concept, which was the creation of planning district commissions and service district commissions. And whereas the Virginia Area Development Act passed in 1968, creating the Planning District Commission framework to encourage and facilitate local government cooperation and state-local cooperation in addressing on a regional basis problems of a greater than local significance. And whereas on January 16, 1973, the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission held its first meeting at the Culpeper Town Hall with charter members from Fauquier County, Orange County, Rappahannock County, and the town of Warrenton attending. And whereas the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission is now led by members representing the counties of Culpeper, Fauquier, Madison, Orange, Rappahannock, and the towns of Culpeper, Gordonsville, Madison, Orange, Remington, the Plains, Warrenton, and Washington. And whereas the RRRC has provided professional planning and technical resources, a concerted approach to regional cooperation, planning assistance with program delivery, and a forum for the interaction of appointed and elected officials and citizen members of the region. And it serves as a liaison between local and state government, partnering with the Commonwealth to carry out state initiatives at the local and regional level. And whereas the RRRC and its partners have worked on numerous projects impacting the Rappahannock-Rapidan region in the areas of agricultural development, environmental planning, transportation planning and coordination, regional tourism, criminal justice planning, housing development and homeless services, hazard mitigation planning, and regional growth issues. And whereas RRRC takes great pride in the value that its work has brought to the Rappahannock-Rapidan region over the past 50 years and recognizes the importance of regional collaboration in addressing challenges in the future, now therefore be it resolved that on the occasion of its 50th anniversary, the Culpeper County Board of Supervisors wishes to commend the RRRC for its excellent work in the region over a period of years, and be it further resolved that the board expresses its gratitude to the Rappahannock-Rapidan Regional Commission for the tremendous service that it has provided to Culpeper County over the years.
Thank you very much, Chairman Deal, Mr. Egerton. My compliments on reading that really long resolution that if I had written the template again, might have shortened a little bit. Just a couple of quick comments. I appreciate the board, approving that resolution. To my knowledge, unless somebody's not told me, you're the first of our 13 jurisdictions to pass the resolution for our 50th anniversary. As the resolution said, we're very proud of the work that we've done. I do want to take this opportunity. Culpeper County wasn't listed among the charter members for the first meeting, but Culpeper County joined in July 1974. We had the first two members, Mr. J. Robert Miller and Mr. Fred Buswell, served from the county. Mr. Deal, Mr. Bates, Mr. Underwood, and Mr. Egerton have all spent time or are currently serving on the commission, and we appreciate their leadership. And I just went back through our list. There's been 24 members from Culpeper County during that 50-year time frame, and in addition to the 4 of you that I just mentioned on the board currently, Ms. Sue Hansen, Ms. Ruth Updike, Mr. John Coates, and Mr. Steve Walker were 4 that stood out not only for my work but for their time spent. Ms. Updike spent 18 years on the commission, Mrs. Hansen 17 plus years on the commission, and their leadership is really what has guided us, certainly for the past 20 to 25 years. So again, very appreciative of the board passing the resolution. I do want to invite all of you to our 50th anniversary celebration, which will be October 4th at Old House Vineyards here in Culpeper. And you'll see that invitation soon, but appreciate the work and appreciate the partnership with the county.
Well, Patrick, I'll just say, from your standpoint, that, the commission members change quite often, but you've been in that leadership role for quite a while now. And I know personally, if I've ever come to you with an issue that involves Culpeper, that you're always there and you try to commingle that into any type of regional commission plan that's available, and I really appreciate that. I know Supervisor Underwood is on the commission now. I don't know if he has any comments he'd like to share or not, but I just personally want to thank you for your leadership in years that you've been there.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
I think the commission is doing very well. It recently had a change in chairperson, so things are changing a little, but it's great for facilitating interaction between the members of Board of Supervisors and town councils of all of the surrounding jurisdictions, and the work in terms of contributing towards affordable housing and transportation planning is valuable, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve with Patrick and the other members.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. I move we approve the resolution commemorating the 50th anniversary.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Moving on, the board will receive an update regarding the county's 2023-2024 health insurance renewal. And go ahead and turn this over to John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I consider this to be good news this morning. We are requesting that the board authorize us to maintain the adopted FY24 budget as it was adopted regarding the employer contribution to our health insurance premiums. I would remind everyone that we are self-insured at this point, have been for several years. But we have gotten our renewal back, and it was less than the 11% that we had budgeted for health insurance increases. And when we get an increase, we normally have the county raise its share by 11%, and the employees have to take on their share of the 11%. Because of the better-than-expected renewal, we'd like to propose that the employee share be reduced to 6.5%, which is the renewal amount. We'd like to continue on with what was budgeted as far as the employer contribution, simply because, again, we are self-insured and our account could use a little bit of bolstering. It's not an extremely healthy account. It is in the black, so to speak. But bottom line, what we'd look for today is your approval to maintain the county's contribution as budgeted and reduce employees' increase from 11% to 6.5%.
That makes, to me, I move that we do so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no items of old business. We have one item of new business. The board will discuss and consider approval of an amendment to the bylaws for the Culpeper Public Transportation Board. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Rothamel is our representative on this transportation board, and they recently met and had proposed a change to their bylaws. This is a change that would have to be approved by both the Board of Supervisors and the Town Council. The change is just a very simple one with regard to the required memberships on the Transportation Board. Currently, there is a designation that one of the board members has to be a member of Aging Together, and they'd like to replace that with a little bit more flexible, more generic local organization representing health, wellness, or older adults. And as I understand it, the reason for making this change is just so that, again, it doesn't absolutely have to be Aging Together. It can be an organization of that nature, and makes it easier for them to have full membership on the board.
Okay, thank you, John.
I move we approve the change. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, committee reports. Supervisor Underwood, Public Works.
We'll have one item that went into closed session, so it's been added to the agenda there. No other action items.
Okay, Building and Grounds, Supervisor Campbell.
The committee brings forward a motion that the board authorize staff to move forward through the bid process for the proposed renovation of the former cooperative extension offices.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
It probably is the best alternative, but the price seemed a little high. So we're spending several $100,000 for, I mean, when you look at it on a per square footage basis, I'm confident the committee did the best work and came up with the best alternative, but it certainly reflects that there's inflation out there.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just, and to be 100% clear, we're ready to go to bid with the project, and the estimate, you're correct, is extremely high, but we're hoping for better results, and the board will get one more crack at this before it's actually money spent.
And I used to not respect Mr. Howard for having bids that are high, but he always presents, I think, the worst-case scenario, which in some ways that's a good thing. So, but hopefully, like John said, hopefully we can get a much better bid than what the estimate is from staff, so. Okay, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The committee brings forward a motion to authorize staff to pursue an application for a Kaboom Playground grant for Spillman Park.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Rules Committee, Supervisor Bates.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, did not meet.
Okay, Personnel Committee, defer to Supervisor Bates on this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, the committee brings forward a motion to adopt a proposed job classification list and revised pay scales for county employees to include appropriation of $51,432 to ensure that all employees are paid at least the minimum salary in the newly adopted pay scale.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Joint Committee, Supervisor Bates.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The committee will provide a presentation and recommendations regarding major school capital projects. And with this, I'll, if John has anything he wants to add to that, or we can turn this over to Dr. Brads.
I think I don't have anything to add. Thank you, Mr. Bates. This is some work that the Joint Capital Planning Committee has been at for probably about a year now, and we have developed a presentation which Dr. Brads gets the pleasure of presenting that kind of tells you where we've been and where we think we need to go. So, Tony?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Egerton, staff. Thank you for this opportunity to present the recommendations to this point from the Joint Capital Planning Committee. I appreciate the time and effort and energy of the committee to bring forward this presentation today. I'll get to the membership of the committee, so rest assured you will not hear from me the entire time, so that's good. I'm quite certain you'll be happy with that. On the agenda there, and I want to think of this, I want you to think of today's presentation as what you see on the slides is going to be sort of the play-by-play. You can see that. We won't read a great deal of that to you, but the intent of myself and my colleagues is to give you some color commentary on some of the background on that and have any other members chime in if that's appropriate, and certainly answer your questions along the way. So feel free to ask a question as we go. This is intended to be interactive and not just stand and deliver. You see, this is the agenda for the day. The first three bullets are very self-explanatory. And getting to the point that Mr. Egerton mentioned, our recommendations. But before we get to the recommendations, I have another goal of today, and that is for each and every one of you and everybody in the audience and everybody in TV land to go, wow, I learned something today that I didn't know. I learned something today I'd like to know something more about. That's fine. But I think you'll be surprised with what we present factually today that will give you pause to say, that's pretty amazing. So that's the goal. When you get a presentation, you always want to walk away and say, well, I learned something today that I didn't know. I hope that for you today. In fact, I hope you learn a lot. So the committee, Mr. Bates, Mr. Durr, thank you very much. From the Board of Supervisors, appreciate your participation, input, advice, counsel. Ms. Baker is here. Ms. Smith is here. Thank you for them, for those members being here. We have other school board members here present today, so thank you for them being here. Myself and Mr. Egerton, we've sort of been the co-chairs. This is a familiar territory for us because we did this together, I would say, quite successfully with your assistance when we did the joint career and technical education opportunities, those kinds of things, which from that process evolved actually, an incredible facility in CTEC, and we thank you for that. So this process has worked for us. We also had a number of staff members, Mr. Hallman, Dr. O'Brien, Mr. Robson, Mr. Shomo, and involved with the process. And also today, my colleagues, Mr. Rob Hallman, Director of Instruction, Executive Director of Instruction, and Dr. Donovan O'Brien, Executive Director of Operations, will be also presenting components of the presentation today and be able to answer your questions. Also, it'll be referenced further in the presentation. We've had input from Sam McLaren with the county and Andrew Hopewell with town planning, and that's been integral to getting this information together for you today. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. We want to talk to you a little bit about history of growth, and think history of growth not since the beginning of time in education in Culpeper. In the last 20 years, 20 years or so, what have you done so graciously to help us with growing community, growing student enrollment? So we wanted to start here and show you, this is in recent memory, right? We've added an elementary school and added a high school, Eastern View and Yao, in 2008. Self-explanatory, but just visually, that's a reminder. Since then, how we continued to manage some growth, right after we did Eastern View, with your assistance, we fully recognized that CCHS needed to be modernized. Technology, equipment, HVAC, a small amount of capacity increase, but mainly modernization, so that the new school wasn't so far advanced to what CCHS was, since it'd been several years since it had any major renovation done to that building. And that building has been renovated, updated since 1969. And you'll see that embedded into the picture there, the construction date of CCHS is 1969. Culpeper County Technical Education Center, 2020. That's in there. It's not a standalone school, but you'll see in another slide, that takes pressure off of our two high schools in terms of capacity, because those students are attending there for half of their day rather than in their high school. So that is a factor that, looking forward, you helped us with that in terms of our secondary, our high school capacity. Other steps as we've seen growth of the early 2000s, mid-2000s starting to tick back up. Right after Yao was open, not too far after, 4 years, we increased some capacity there with adding 2 classrooms, and closing 2 classrooms rather. In 2014, added modulars to Farmington. In 2017, we started looking at not only the mechanical systems and the roof of CMS, but also did a comprehensive study as to the appropriateness to renovate or replace that facility. So we did that in spring, final report July of 2017. So that's there, 2017. We started looking at that in terms of another place or space for modernization, renovation, and capacity if that's appropriate. Other steps in 2019, those elementary numbers were coming up, so we contracted with an organization that's been in business for 25 plus years. This is what they do. They do capacity, they do enrollment, they do projections, They look at building permits. These are truly experts from afar that we deploy beyond what we can do as staff and beyond what county can do as staff. So we started working with Cooperative Strategies in 2019, and the result of that was to do some redistricting, boundary adjustments for our elementary zones in 2019-20 school year. So we did that. In addition to that year, 2020, we added modular classrooms at Sycamore Park, and at that point also embarked on, this is not just what we think, we also contracted with a firm, an international firm that they do facilities assessment. So Bureau Veritas came in and assessed all of our facilities, and that facility condition assessment renders a facility condition index. And you can imagine in the index system, if you're a higher number, that means you're in greatest need. And so that's a component that we needed to do to maintain the facilities that we have to support our students and our staff. The important thing there is that we are able to, as we upgrade or update a facility, the software that we have, we can go in and increase and improve the facility condition index by inputting those changes or those modifications. 2021, as you know, CTEC opens. We started that process in 2020, but we opened in 2021, and that, as I said earlier, it's not a huge capacity component, but it does add space or add elective seats for students for half a day from both high schools. So that helped us. ESSER, I won't go into ESSER, that'll take all day, right? But that came at the right time. We had a plan for. I'd like to use the term shovel-ready. I don't think we had to use any shovels in this, but the base building that is there, that was the high school, you know the history better than I do. Floyd T. Benz was renovated into a middle school, opened in the early 2000s, and we just recently added additional 8 classrooms by relocating central office out of Floyd T. Benz, gained 8 classrooms, and that helped with that capacity. So we did that. We did that. Every ounce of that came from ESSER money. We were able to do that because that was in the planning process in our CIP that we were going to, when we could, do that with local funded CIP funds. That was ESSER, so got that done, and that's been in place. This will be the second school year of using those additional classrooms. And again, just think sometimes the pictures are worth 1,000 words. I'm going to the wrong direction there, sorry. So after that, continue steps to manage growth. 2022, by then we have joint capital planning underway. And in 2022, joint capital planning said to administration, and again, I think I said this, but I want to reiterate it, Mr. Eggerson and I jointly work together, commiserate to develop these agendas based on what the board members would like to see or talk about, and we do that together. And we've done that to this point 19 times. So again, I appreciate everybody's efforts aside from all of your other assignments of how many times they've met, because they realize that capital projects for the school division are very important to all of us, to the county's growth. So appreciate that again, I want to say that. But the committee said, hey, let's go back and look at that 2017 study and re-examine what are the costs. Could it be better to replace? Could it be better to renovate? Let's take another look at that. So we had that updated, received that report from the firm that did the first study in December of just this last year, December 22. So that's very much updated in this fall. And some other things to impact growth. We enclosed some classrooms. In the process of enclosing classrooms that were open areas, purposefully open common areas, closed those in to pick up classroom space there. And simultaneous to that, the Joint Committee said, hey, we need to see what's going on. We see it all the time, conversations coming back and forth in these meetings. Rooftops, we see these developments. Let's look at it. Let's look at school capacity. Let's look at our enrollment. Let's look at our enrollment projections. Let's look at county growth and where they are. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But the committee encouraged us to go take a look at that. So we go back to a cooperative strategies again that I mentioned earlier to help us do another deep dive on enrollment. And Mr. Hallman is going to, enrollment capacity and projections. Mr. Hallman is going to cover that with you in just a minute or two. So to continue with steps to manage the potential impact of growth, we have space. We look at our assets and say, what's the best use of our asset? If you know Eastern View, you may recognize that, and it was constructed with 4 locker bays, 2 on the lower level, 2 on the upper level. They're ginormous, and guess what? Students don't use them. So they can better be utilized as classroom spaces. What you're looking at right there can be 3 classrooms. So that process is underway. Not right now. We won't be able to get access to that until probably next school year, but we're in the process of going out to bid to convert those classrooms and 2 of the bays in the center of the building, leaving the bays in place in case we need them. Stage students, storage. Some students may still want to have a locker for their book bag, but most students do not. But we're going to be able to pick up 6 additional classrooms. So think about that, adding 10 classrooms, the 4 that I previously mentioned, plus these 6, to help manage that secondary growth at the high school level, plus the notion of C-Tech with elective space. So those things we've been doing with your assistance, but part of why we do that is, yes, the greater opportunity for our students, but also it gives us breathing room. It does. So this slide just is to reiterate our studies, and we just didn't make this stuff up, right? And you know that, but I want to reiterate that. Let's see this, if I can do this right. Yeah, yes, there we go. 2017 study of renovate or replace, couple, 2 or 3 different options here for CMS initially. We take a look at that. You can see the tabs there and the sticky notes. This is it's kind of worn. I've been through that. Then after that, 2020, is when we went out and contracted with Bureau Veritas to look at every facility that we had. I mentioned that previously, doing the facility condition assessment to render a facility condition index for our schools. And teaser of the one that is in the highest need of updating and renovating or repair or replacement is CMS. The next item is going back at the behest of the Joint Capital Planning Committee. Let's look at the concept, the program update of CMS to renovate or replace what would be the best thing to do. That happened in 2022, as you can see the date there. And then we're still getting information from cooperative strategies in terms of the enrollment. And that's the last report there in terms of enrollment, capacity, and all those things that I referenced. So capacity, enrollment, and growth. At this time, I'll pause for a second and see if you have any questions on what I've covered up to this point. I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Hallman, in just a second to talk you through cooperative strategies and what we have learned from that. And this is where you're going to start getting some aha, wow moments. So up to this point, do you have any questions? And we do have a segment of questions at the end for sure. Yes, sir.
Has the study that was done in December of '22 been shared with the board?
Whoops, going the wrong way, sir. My bad. That study, the update?
Yes.
No, sir, not yet. That's been given to the Joint Capital Planning Committee. They have seen it. 2 members of your board have seen that. We would be happy to give that study to you.
Have those members of the board, since they saw it, have they briefed the board on what it says? No, we have not. Okay, I would appreciate the opportunity to see the study.
Absolutely, sir.
With that said, Dr. Brads, this also, with what Dr. Harmon is going to present coming forward, is basically the highlights of what these studies are. They're pretty in-depth studies from what we've gone over. And I appreciate your wanting to delve into it deeper, and I'm sure Dr. Brads will be glad to provide that to you. But Dr. Harmon is going to definitely bring up
Absolutely,
the
but
strong
it's-
points of that.
I think the other part of this, Tom, is that this all sort of goes together as a package with the study of the school, with the study of population growth, with capacity. So looking at these as individual pieces might not put the whole thing together properly, and that's the idea today.
Oh, no, I've read the others. That's just the one I have not been provided, so I want to read it in detail. And I mean, as Dr. Brad said, this is the most consequential decision we're going to make for the schools in terms of capital projects in the next many, many decades. So I'd like to be able to do my homework.
Yes, sir, absolutely, appreciate it, great question. And just in terms of this process, what we have done in the past as joint capital is kind of present summaries. And then at the point when the Board of Supervisors wanted a deeper dive, you were provided it. So we will certainly be able to do that, not a problem. So with no other questions, we'll go to cooperative strategies. And Mr. Hammond is going to start on this slide, I believe. Is that correct, Rob?
Good morning. My name is Rob Hallman. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction for Culpeper Schools for about the last 13 years. And during that time, I've been able to work with Cooperative Strategies before. They've done excellent work for us, as Dr. Brad's mentioned. They've been in business for 25 years and do this work regularly across the country. They mentioned to me that they've done thousands of enrollment projections and over 250 housing analysis reports. So they're very comfortable with the numbers that they can produce. I don't know how many wow moments I'll produce, as Dr. Brad said, but I'll try to share some information with you that might take you there. First of all, when we re-engaged after the Joint Capital Planning meeting committee said we need more information before we can go forward to our respective boards. They needed more information to move forward. So Cooperative Strategies remapped all of the buildings as we currently use them. They did this several years ago, but what happens over time is we add a home room, we add a special ed classroom, it could be a preschool, it could be ESL, any number of things change kind of the way we use a building from year to year. So they've reevaluated the buildings, looked at the master schedule, and then produced a report that says this is how you use your building, this is the most effective way to use your building, this is how many kids your building can hold. Again, if I go too fast, please wave me down. So some of the data that they've used to do their enrollment projections, you can see those for yourself. The one thing I would point out, that last bullet, they used active building permits during this report. So this enrollment report was based on units that were being built at the time, not projected units. That's a different piece that they provided to us. They did a 10-year look back and a 10-year look forward, so that some of the information they're going to provide to us goes all the way through the 32-33 school year projection. So after all of that analysis, they come back to us and they say, using the mapping information and the September count from last September, we use September 30th every year to make the numbers more consistent. They determined this was our capacity usage for our buildings. The numbers that kind of jump out at you there are 3 of our elementary schools. One's at 97, 198, and 199% optimal capacity at this point. If you look at CMS, 93, Eastern View, 93. But what I would point out there, the Eastern View classrooms that Dr. Brad's just mentioned were not included at the time. So that number at Eastern View is actually going to come down because the construction on those spaces hasn't completely finished, and the new ones that are coming in 24 aren't in that number. So we're comfortable with adding space to Eastern View, that number will come down. You'll notice that the Floyd T. Binns number is at 78%. Why is that? Central office moved out, and we added those additional classrooms just last year, and that helped get them back in the green. So this is the status. The Cooperative Strategies, they finished their work in early June. So this is the number that they shared with us moving forward. So our catchphrase kind of in the meetings have been, if you build it, will they come, or they're going to come, right? That someone's going to move into these things when they're built. Some are potential, some are under construction. So we're going to take you through just a few of the things that are either on the books or currently underway, just so you kind of get a sense of what's happening. The focus for Cooperative Strategies was to evaluate planned developments, and those were mostly subdivisions, townhouses, apartments, and condos. The main focus wasn't on individual homes that are popping up across the county. If they had an active permit, they're included. But if it popped up after she evaluated, or the company evaluated active permits, it wouldn't be in this particular study. So you look at a couple models there. I'll provide this one to you, Kite Acres. So this is an example of one that's across from the high school. They're just in the kind of cutting down trees phase, and I think they did that in April, and I haven't seen any action there for some time. So you've got a number of these on the books that are just kind of pending. Then you go to some place like Laurel Ridge / Laurel Park, and the names change a little bit. They're under the excavation and infrastructure phase. We're starting to see sewer system put in, that kind of thing, sewer pipeline. Go to a place like Ridgeview. While this is only one street, there's already 2, 3, 4 model home, at least one model home and 2 or 3 houses available at that point. Madison Station, townhouses, went up there off of Route 3. It was 1. And then all of a sudden you came back another month and now there's the 4, the full development is there. So you've got all of these units, developments in different stages. Here's the greens. This is a multi-phase development. Again, excavation, putting in sewer line, that kind of thing. Dominion Apartments, you've seen that across from Mosby Meadows, well underway, that, under roof. They look like they're a few months away. Stonehaven has completed phase 1, and they're moving into phase 2, and I think they were well on their schedule to do about 150 a year, if I stand correct. I show you this one again. That's at Laurel Park that we just showed you that was under excavation stage. When you look at that, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, those are coming. Now, whether or not they come 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, I'm not sure. But that's a potential there that we have to be prepared for as a school division. Currently, that's zoned for Pearl Sample. And you remember the 3 schools I showed you where they stood. So we're looking at that very closely. Here's another. Kite Acres, that concept where the trees were down, that's a 61 homes. It's in the Sycamore Park zone. That was also a 90+% school. So we're keeping our eyes on particularly the ones for those schools that are going to be impacted the most. So, again, I think Sam's here. Sam and Andrew with the town and county have been extremely helpful because we wouldn't have the information about the potential developments and their status and what might be put on hold. And we told Cooperative Strategies, this is where we are with all of these. We don't think this one's going to be built out. They didn't include that. It's down the road. So they really examined the information that we had directly from your staff. And they based all these things on analytics. So what I'm going to show you next, it could maybe be in the weeds, but I think this might help you a little bit. So they mapped all of our existing students. Every kid that was a student in Culpeper schools last year got put into the Cooperative Strategy software, and all the little subdivisions were developed, and they could manipulate this map and show us where our kids are. With that, you see some of those little yellow boxes on there. Those were the projected developments. Some may be underway, some may just be down the road. So they use that information to help us come up with student yields. And the little example down at the bottom is yields are just the number of kids that can potentially come out of a house or a neighborhood. Again, there's an up close, you can see elementary schools are the little green circles with the E, middle schools, the M's, so you can see where our schools are as well. So they will use this map to evaluate how many kids come out of a neighborhood right now, real students, and we will apply that to a potential development to try to determine how many kids could come out of a similar neighborhood. So the first example I'm going to share with you is High Point in town, and it's difficult because that box scrolls on the actual map. But they use these to project number of students. So in this example, they called this the High Point larger lots, even though they are only like 0.27 of an acre, I think, something like that, 0.28. And of those in that neighborhood, there are 115 students that come out of there, and that's 1.1 students per home. And we didn't just stop there and say, wow, that's what Culpeper must produce. No, that's what that neighborhood with that size house and that size lot produced. We can't use that across the whole county because that's not the actual number. So in this case, these were built in 2013. There's 104 units, around $350,000, and produces 1.1. So they use that factor in potential developments that are going to build similar houses, and they would apply that to those neighborhoods. So here's another example. In High Point, but this is the townhouse example. So we don't want to say there's going to be 1.1 kid coming out of every townhouse. So they use their factor to say how many kids are coming out of there. Well, it's 55. So that's 0.54 students for townhouses. And then they could apply that to every townhouse development that might be coming around the county. Questions so far? I don't want to go too fast on this. Yes, sir.
Yes, did they consider, back when you had the previous map, where you were showing where all the students are, did they consider where each one rode the bus and each one did not?
Rode the bus.
Yes, so for the students, they have to get to school.
Correct.
And they either get to school using school transportation or using private transportation. Did they consider where students are using private transportation versus public transportation?
No, because once they get to school, we have to put them in a seat. So it doesn't matter how they get to us, we just have to make sure we
Well,
have room for them.
For the families and for the students, it does matter how they get to school, tremendously. I know it may not matter to you once they're in school, but if it takes them an hour and 45 to get to school, that makes a huge difference. And so what, to me, a very important dynamic piece of this modeling would be the transportation patterns of the household members. Because ultimately, this is over many years, a giant logistics challenge. So looking at it logistically is critical.
I would agree with that. I think what happens in the phase down the road, should you decide you need a renovation or a replacement or a new school someplace, that's when you get into where's the best location for this school to be. At this point, we need to determine are our schools full or not? And that was kind of their task, is tell us what our capacities are, and if any of these potential new developments are going to influence those schools. For example, that 300-house unit at Laurel Park would definitely impact Pearl Sample, let's say. So we have to kind of anticipate that.
Yes, look, and we've, I mean, the board's used Weldon Cooper and others to do that in the past, and so fundamentally, if Culpeper's growing, the schools are getting fuller. I get that, and so we'll need new.
Yes, sir. So I covered that one. Okay, so the final example really to take you through the software that Cooperative Strategies uses and what they bring to the table. So here's an example of the new Northridge off of Ira Hoffman. And what you'll see there are the two yellows, two potential developments. One, again, just has trees down. If you go to the other one, you drive by that, Northridge just has trees down. There's no land cleared at this point, no grading, no infrastructure, but they are on the books. So using the Northridge example, there were 184 students there, and they determined of those houses, and I think there were 288 houses, there's a 0.6 kid coming out of each one of those homes. And because those homes are going to be similar in size and lots, price point probably a little bit higher at this point because it's a couple years older, but they can at least apply that factor to what would come out of that neighborhood. So what they've come up with is in those two potential developments, they applied a factor of 0.30 for elementary, 0.14 for middle, and 0.21 for high school. So those 61 homes at Kite Acres and 31 homes at Northridge Estates could approximately produce 63 school-age children. So they can give us that number that close based on what's happening in all of the other subdivisions. And I've just given you a few examples, because if you go back to that larger map, they've done that for every single subdivision in the whole county. So they can project that. So the members of the Joint Committee said, okay, well, we need to know what it's really going to look like. What happens if all of these build out? And what if they're bringing kids to us tomorrow? So we know in reality, they're not going to build out just like that tomorrow, but we had Cooperative Strategies take a look at it. So if all the potential developments currently on the books, you can see on the left, school like AG, there's that condominium project potentially, so that could be 75 students into AG. Emerald Hill, you see up in the northern end, there are multiple, including Stonehaven, which is underway, multiple planned developments up there, potentially 290 students for Emerald Hill. So this chart tells you what it could be. Now, of course, something happens with the economy and everything stop or slow. You know, things come in waves. But the board wanted to know, the Joint Capital Planning Committee wanted to know what would it look like. So Cooperative Strategies went one step further. They could take it multiple steps if they wanted to. They said, knowing that some of those kids already live within the division and might move from an older house to a newer house, they didn't say all 100% of these students are going to be brand-new students. So they said, this is what it would look like if only 75% of those students were new students. And they applied that to the existing student population plus 75%, and you can see where we'd be with capacity on those schools. Questions on that? Okay, so what we asked them was, tell us where we are, whether or not we're exhausting our capacity, what we're going to do with additional space. More kids come, we need more space. And one of their takeaways was what they see in the data that they received from the town and the county. We're expecting much higher levels of housing development over the next 10 to 15 years than we've experienced in the last 10 to 15 years. And they want to have us be prepared for that. And at that,
So
if there are no more questions, yes, ma'am.
They went through and did all the subdivisions, but we also have some extensive growth in by right divides and houses popping up throughout our RA and our
Yes, ma'am.
A1. Did they take those type of into account, all the vacant lots that were up for sale, all the new construction that were in those individual areas? Because those account for a lot.
Yes, ma'am. At the time they drew the data down from the county, any active permit was included. If it was just a lot that was for sale and it's just sitting there, they didn't, because that lot could sit there for 5 years or
Right.
25 years. So, but
Okay.
if it had an active permit on it, they did include it.
Well, they're doing apples and oranges, meaning they're assuming that the subdivision is built, whether it may or may not be. They're not assuming that the vacant lot is built, whether it may or may not be. So they're not being consistent in their methodology.
Okay. Well, I guess the difference was, single individual houses don't hit you in the face as hard all at one time as one subdivision that would completely build out over the course of a year or two. And I understand your point, and we can talk to them about how they've addressed that in the past. You're up next.
Probably. Mr. Underwood, great question. I don't know that I would say, I'll figure this thing out here, sorry, that they're necessarily flawed in their thinking, because they know us, they know Culpeper County, and the intent was looking at where our students already are. And our students already typically are in subdivisions. So that's why they apply their numbers, I would say, maybe with a different rubric, maybe with a different application in their software, because that's the known entity of how we have chunks of kids. Those are chunks of kids in our school division. So they're not discounting the single startups, whatever, if they're under permit, but they're not as replicatable in the data set as the subdivisions are. That's all. So I just wanted to share that to you. They've been doing this for a long time. Yes, what we are trying to do to our best ability is to build, the term we've used is comps. It's comparables, right? You go out to real estate, you're looking at a house, and they look at all the comps around you to assess that value, or whether you're going to buy that or whether you're going to sell something. That's about all we can do, because none of that's in stone. The known comps are there. So we're using our known comps, where our kids are right now. An example there. Those 184 students, they're our students in that neighborhood. So our best estimate, not perfect, but our best estimate is if we build something very similar to that in the county, same size, same price range, that's what the yield would be. So if they say there's going to be 100 units going in there, then we apply the 0.64. And I know you get that. I'm not trying to argue that point. But I think that they go with the known gross accumulation of where our kids are in terms of where they're spread out. That's all. We can have them look at that more specifically. We have a great relationship with them to say, what would be your prediction about these other, I would say, not one-offs, but smaller segments?
Well,
Ken?
we know throughout cycles how many homes are built in A1 and RA. So we could, to come up with a figure there simplistically would be one thing, but for another, for example, I have a database of every registered voter, which is not all the constituents, but every registered voter in every house in Culpeper County with their age. So to see exactly how the ages are changing in various areas is very doable. That information is readily available. And so from that, anecdotally, which it's not a large data problem, it's a small data problem. We've got about 18,000 houses, that's small data. We got about 8,400 school students, that's small data. When we look at what I'm seeing occur, in the A1 and RA areas, the average age of the household member is decreasing. The average size of the household is increasing. And I believe that many members here see that. I'll bet the data shows it. You may not see it historically, but I'm confident that since the pandemic, that is what has happened, at least in the area I represent.
If I may, with what you're explaining though, Tom, that actually makes the situation even worse.
Well, I agree, it is worse.
That's even worse. So,
I'm thinking they're
from what-
understating the need for schools.
Well, what they're explaining, I think, is spot on, and it's,
Yes.
you're right, that's making it a lot worse.
I agree.
So now to segue to the recommendations, and my colleague, Dr. O'Brien's going to come up and talk about some of the technicality with respect to the renovation aspect, is that please know that in the process, the Joint Capital Planning Committee has been absolutely frugal and consistent in what can we compare, what data is real. They have done a great job with that. And I would say in the basis of that, absolutely looking at taxpayer dollars all the way. What's our best bang for the buck? So that's been a great collaboration with having these two gentlemen on there, yes, but. So we've done a lot of that, and that is here. And so that's how we're getting to the yes, but, and the first recommendation from not just the school administration or the school board, but from the joint committee is the following. Two things. First, recommendation one is a full CMS renovation with increased capacity. Okay? Why renovate CMS? Well, it is where it is. It's not the best location, but it's an asset. And we are playing the cards we were dealt. That school is there. We have schools 1948, 1960, 1965 off the top of my head. We have older schools. It's a 1977 school with good bones, worthy of renovation. Not just from me, from the county. If we need help outside of that area with respect to Ira Hoffman, that's a whole other conversation, and I know you all have worked on that. You've talked to VDOT about that out there in terms of traffic, but we have, as a school division, having high school, middle school there, we've managed that site pretty well. But with your support, we're protecting that asset already. We're in the process of wrapping up a project of a new roof, a new TPO roof on that project as we speak. It will be ready by next Wednesday. If some flashing or whatever. Why next Wednesday? Next Wednesday, folks, is the first day of school. So I meant to say that earlier. So we're excited about that. Built in '77, roofing gives that building another 25 years life. So that's an awesome thing. We have done HVAC for the gym and rooftop units on the large gym, which is one of the larger gyms in the region that we can host tournaments in, et cetera. But previous leadership, school division leadership, county leadership, constructed it for that purpose. The projected growth, what we're looking at for CMS, is going to rapidly get it to 110% of its optimal capacity. So that is a concern, the capacity component. And last but not least is the facility condition index. So if you had a report card and which school graded out the lowest, it would be CMS. That means if we choose to protect that asset and use it for anything else, it still needs millions of dollars of help to protect that asset for whatever you think, school board thinks we ought to do with it. Joint committee thinks that the most practical thing to do and the most frugal thing to do and consistent with thinking about the taxpayer dollar is to renovate that building, to give us some capacity and modernize that building and give us another 20, 25 years life in that location. So other benefits I just talked about briefly, increase the capacity. That is by adding 40,000 square feet, improve instructional environment with technology. We talked about modernization to CCHS after we built EVHS. Not a bad thing. We wanted to improve instructional environment with new technology because Floyd T. Benz, inside and out, is, even though it's in an older building, is more modern now than CMS in terms of it being touched over the years, renovated early 2000s, and now recently we added some classrooms to it. So it needs a facelift if it's going to remain in the fleet, so to speak, for service to our students and to our staff and to our community. So that's why the Joint Committee strongly believes it's an asset worth keeping as a middle school with a renovation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. O'Brien. He's going to further talk about why renovate CMS, particularly with respect to the Bureau Veritas facility assessment of that facility. Happy to answer any questions before Donovan, if need be. Good? Yes, sir?
I want to make sure I'm clear. The committee did not study transportation patterns and logistics before they recommended renovating Culpeper Middle School.
We had conversations about it, but in terms of route data, which is always changing, and walk zones, which is changing, and which we can have some impact on where we can move walk zones, we have some flexibility there. Conversationally, yes, but a full-blown study of transportation impacts, no, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Ready? Get this out of your way. This is me.
But Mr. Underwood, as the Executive Director of Operations, I oversee transportation as well. So absolutely, we're certainly concerned about any changes we make in terms of program capacity, what kind of impact that will have on transportation. So I do appreciate that question because it's certainly something near and dear to my heart. So I've been in Culpeper Schools since about 2000, and this is only my second year as the Executive Director of Operations. So I'm going to take a minute, talk a little bit about what this means in a little more detail, and above all, try to explain that this company came in, did a thorough examination of the mechanical systems, the HVAC, the structure, obviously the roof, and they identified things that needed fixed quickly, or you can sit on for a couple of years. And in the end, they provided us a facility index rating. Anything above 30% is considered end of life, according to Bureau Veritas. As you see, CMS was reported at 55.7%. So it was definitely the school in most need of renovation. And in 10 years, it will be as high as 61.9%. Now, granted, we're not considering the addition of the new roof. The new roof will certainly placate that number and bring it down a little bit, but it would still be above the 30%. So thank you for the roof. It is going to make a great difference, but we do have to do some work on the interior. What we know is we've renovated the electric boilers, but that was done about 15 years ago, and we did a chiller refurbishment in 2017. Other than that, all the other mechanical systems within the building are about 46 years old since the time the school was built. So you can imagine that is certainly something that needs to be addressed and taken care of. So what's the sticker? Well, if we go and we renovate CMS, we first pursued our A&E firm, which is Spectrum Design, and in 2017, they provided us an estimate with the additional space, the additional square footage of $41 million. Now, in December of 2022, that estimate came in at $58 million. Obviously, the increase in construction cost has played a role in that estimate. However, we won't know until this actually goes out to bid what that amount may actually be in the end. So we want to make sure we understand that as well. I would also note that Bureau Veritas did a value of the school as it is at $51 million. So when you think about insuring a building and replacement costs, you can see how that number kind of gets involved in where some of this additional space and cost of reno exist. And this is kind of a wow moment or kind of an exciting part of looking at what this renovation could potentially be based on the designs provided by our A&E firm. First off, the idea is opening up the school, doing what we call an open concept. And you can see what a gallery entrance would look like. The firm actually provided that image, as well as what we call grade level towers. A big part of that gallery entrance is you now have a vestibule that is visible. It's open, it's light and airy, and it's easier from a security standpoint to see who's in there. I don't know if you've been to CMS lately and going into that first vestibule, it's kind of closed. This gives you that added perspective of it just being open and better visualization and better camera coverage. We also want to talk a little bit about how the grade level towers, the addition of the 3 of those, are going to provide an open space as well as you can see in the picture, what we call new technology as well as making it more conducive to the modern learning environment. And with that, we also want to take into consideration that there are some ADA things that we can incorporate that the school doesn't have now as we do this renovation. We'll also have improved technology and lab space, as you can see, opening that up, providing, again, 21st century learning tools instead of the ones that exist now from 1977 that exist in the school as we speak. Another big advantage is we can actually do this while students are in the building. We did this at CCHS, where we would zone areas for renovation while students will be relocated, and then as the renovation's completed, we then move them back. So it gives us that flexibility to keep the school running, to keep kids enrolled, to keep them learning in a safe environment and a productive environment, while at the same time taking care of the facility and bringing it up to speed where it needs to be. That's about all I have. Do you have any questions in regards to this renovation that I might be able to answer?
Yes. What was the other alternative, and what were the difference in projected operating costs over the 40-year period of a new school located along a major arterial versus the old school located not near a major arterial?
Yeah, I understand that question, and I think Dr. Brad's going to talk about that in a moment, what the options were about building new versus renovation. Yes, sir.
Okay, and the operating cost perspective, thanks.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. On that, if you could go back to showing your wow moment as
Wow
far
moment,
as
yes, sir.
entrance feature there. So there's a fine line as far as materials in construction that's going to portray that wow moment versus what is needed and what is standard from a cost standpoint. So this government facility we're in is not a wow facility, but it meets our needs.
Absolutely.
The Fairfax County Government Center is a wow palace there. And in their opinion, I guess it meets their need at millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So was the materials and the aesthetics taken into consideration from a cost standpoint? When it comes to what's maybe overwhelming or maybe that wow moment that you're talking about versus what is needed and what will work and we can still be proud of.
Absolutely. And again, this is a design from our A&E firm, understanding what the school looks like now and what that entrance is like. And one of the things I would say, that's the first impression you get in the school when you walk in. If you've been to CMS, you walk in and it's that closed vestibule, and then you move from there to the office on the right, you get buzzed in, and you have to kind of work around this kind of S movement to get where you're going within the building. The idea of a gallery entrance is pretty common in a lot of modern school design because, number one, it lets in natural light, and it also creates it would be attached to part of the cafeteria as well. So it would be providing this kind of open air entrance as well as providing for just a larger common space. And the movement of the stairs from where they are now, I don't know if you're familiar with CMS, there's the silo, this round staircase that's over on the left that has been there part of the initial design. That staircase is going to go away, and instead there'll be kind of a grand staircase that goes down. In that gallery, kind of if you picture Eastern View, when you come in and you have the gym entrance on the lower level, or you can stay on the upper level, that open gallery is the same kind of logic that's behind this gallery that'll be put in place. So even though, yes, it's wow, but I don't think it comes at that much of a premium to add the natural light and extend that roof line so you have that open air concept. Yep.
Let me add to a little bit of that, please. Mr. Deal, thank you for the question and the observation. We do things first class, and maybe I misspoke when I said wow, but if you go into CMS and you modernize and open up these towers based on the square footage that we're working with and the footprint that we're working at, if you see the slide there, that's the concept that they're talking about having is a 6th grade, a 7th grade, and an 8th grade tower. So that doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all. This thing has not gone out to bid at all. It doesn't have to be the final design. But with the space that we have available and the footprint we have available and the instructional improvements and flow and the natural light in the building, this is something that they propose. Why? Those pictures, whoops, my backwards and forwards is messed up. These are things they've done in other places. So they have experience taking things that were jammed together, open them up, open learning spaces outside, but also doubles as places for better command and control and safety and security. So the wow component is you do anything in the internal guts of CMS, the answer is going to be wow. Okay, so I want to put that in the context.
Well, let me...
Now, in terms of building materials, I understand that, yes,
Yep.
sir. We don't know about premium materials. We have add alternates. With your help, we have, on a very, very frugal budget, a wow facility at CTEC. I think you would agree with that.
Well, I certainly agree with that, and it's one of the best facilities that we've been involved with ever, in my opinion. But there are other wow moments too, so there has to be a balance, and
Sure.
there has to be some common sense. Because the other wow moment is our citizens getting a real estate tax bill in the mail and their taxes going up $500 or $800 a year. We don't like those wow moments either. So we have to be, very cognizant of what we're doing here and making sure, that it fits our needs, but, there may have to be a certain point to the wow.
Well, the wow would be the instructional modernization, all of that, yes, sir. But the wow would be we need to do this and increase capacity, or we're wasting our wow and we're wasting our money. And we would never do that. You will never hear that from me, for sure. On this screen, on this picture, the concept is basically the same, adding a new, what I would call a raceway, so that you can get in and out of that building differently and safely and get to the instructional areas. And also, and again, it's just a preliminary design. You notice how this juts out, this juts out. This here in the back is a whole new tower. It's a proposal. Why is it proposed this way? Because you don't have but so much space to spread this thing out on, right? So that's why it is going up here, and this is the notion of where we can gain some additional space. It is a schematic. It is a plan. But we have to start somewhere, and with that notion, somewhere with what those costs may be. As I said, I don't have it at my fingertips, but I can find it. In this reno, we have light renovation square footage costs. We have moderate renovation. We have heavy renovation cost in this building, and we have new construction, because all four of those components will happen here. As opposed to, yes, very modern and efficient in a brand new facility, yes. But part of all of that light, moderate, heavy will go to updating all your HVAC systems so that that cost would be efficient, as efficient as a new facility would be what you would replace with. So great question on the wow. We're not talking about wow on finishes and furnitures and fixtures and all that stuff, but the wow there would be you turn this into a modern school is what we're trying to say. With we think is a reasonable price. So I'm going to keep going unless there are further questions on that. Great observation, great question. But we can do wow on the tight, okay? We can. You've seen it.
Love that.
You've seen it? All right.
I love that, yes.
And you talk about being proud of the facility. I would say easily a third of the school divisions in the state of Virginia have visited that facility. I've asked our director of CTE to get us a map and show, let's mark all the people have visited, because that's almost a part-time job for them doing those tours, checking that out. So going to recommendation number 2, if I'm going the right direction, from the Joint Committee, the recommendation number 2. I could toggle back to the slides, but I don't think I need to, because the wow moment for you, or the aha moment, or the oh no moment from Mr. Hammond was seeing all those schools, green, yellow, red stoplight, right? That was the intent. And then with the possible build-outs that could be worse, as Mr. Underwood said, you've got a lot of red over there, all red, particularly at elementary. So coming to a theater near you, if they come, if you build it, they come, and they will come, and we believe it, we see it, the rooftops are coming, then we need an elementary school post-haste. We need a 7th elementary school. And to locate it where? To be determined. To be determined based on where the population is, and yes, sir, absolutely, as it relates to infrastructure and transportation. No doubt about it. But that's a secondary component to the notion that we need another building for the elementary growth that is coming. So what's coming? Division-wide utilization to surpass 100%. So think about 6 elementaries. We are getting very close to 100%. 3 are at 99, 98, 97 respectively right now. New elementary school, based on some estimates, again, not out to bid, seeing what's in VDOE for construction cost, the experience of our A&E firm that have built schools recently, what's new construction cost, those kinds of things. These are from the experts, not from us. So we think that we can do a 650 pupil school capacity, approximately 75,000 square feet, for somewhere between $30 and $33 million. Now, that's without soft costs, fixtures, furnishing, equipment, paying an A&E firm to hopefully do something that's not quite boilerplate, but we don't need custom build. We need something that's functional. The committee is strong about that. But also, it still takes time for them to design that on your site. This does not include a site either. So, but strongly from the data that we see and the projections and where we are right now, the second component of this to add to somewhat increasing our secondary capacity, all those other things, measures that we've taken to increase secondary capacity, not the least of which is the addition of CTEC for those elective seats, right? That helps us tremendously, is to do this at the elementary level. So before I get to that, whoops, again, questions, comments? Joint Committee was very, very, I'm sorry, sir.
Dr. Brad's, yeah.
Yeah, so 650 students, what would that put us at those capacity projections? Would that drop all of the elementary schools down to a 90 to 95%?
Not necessarily. Let's go. Let me find it. Somebody yell at me.
Well, we can remap to make sure that we easily distribute the kids.
Right. Now, the kicker is location, location, location. To have the best way to distribute that load, the yield that Mr. Hammond was talking about. Great question. But where do we place number 7? 007, couldn't resist. Where do we place 7, the 7th elementary school, that can have the best impact to those schools that are going to be under duress?
But I think also my question is 650 students enough? Because I'm seeing 907, 749. I mean, 650, there's only 2 schools that are under that.
Right.
In that projection.
Based on what we see the growth being over the next 10 years, 600 brand new, if you said, everybody, wherever you are, you're staying put, and if you're brand new, you're going to this new place, which you would never be, right, you follow me, right?
Yes.
650 would do it in that growth period. So that's the estimate. Could we go larger? Yes. To protect us from the future, for future growth? Yes. But it's consistent with, I would say, a lot of builds of elementary schools in the 600, 700 range is very typically being built right now. You start getting much larger than that, you've got other logistics, economy of scale, command and control. From an instructional standpoint, my colleagues behind me will say, you don't want 1,000 kids in an elementary school. You don't want that. That's not Culpeper, and that's not us. But 650 is the magic number. It's an estimate.
Okay. And was there also an option looked at, since Culpeper Middle School is, in its current state would be at 106, was there also an option of the elementary, middle school joint facility looked at as well?
We have not looked at that at this point, no.
Okay.
But to the middle school question, if we're redistricting everyone else when we have potentially a 7th elementary online, we've got greater capacity at Floyd T. Benz. If we increase the capacity at CMS, and we have some capacity at Floyd T. Benz, that could change. Now, going down the road with 7 elementaries, it's going to be a very difficult path to have true feeders. And understand, meaning this is your elementary, this is your middle, this is your high. You know, probably have some where this is your middle and this is your high, and it's different when what your path may be. We have that with a small group of people now.
Okay, because these two options that you look at with the renovate CMS and a new elementary school, and then a whole new middle school and a whole new elementary school, I think there is a truly viable third option depending on where we decide to put that elementary school, that you could get kind of that hybrid between these two of doing a renovation, one new school that covers some middle school aspects and some elementary aspects.
That would be up to the Board of Supervisors. So
Have you considered phasing the refurbishment part of the middle school as one phase and the expansion part as another phase?
let's go here. So the answer is yes, sir, because it will necessarily have to happen that way, because it's going to be an occupied renovation. So they will do what they can with the most kids in the building. The last phase would be, say, I've used that term, grade level tower. That could be done first as they're doing some of the HVAC upgrades, those kinds of things. So
Cost-wise.
it's a 2-year process either way of the build, of the reno.
How about cost-wise? Can you phase it cost-wise?
You're going to be bringing contractors back on the site over and over, so I don't know that you're going to find a lot of savings in doing that. That would be a question I would want to take back to professionals and not me just speculating on that. I understand what you're saying, but unless you can say we're going to do just this here, here, and turn it into 3 or 4 small chunks, there's too many integrated chunks that need to be replaced in that school. And then you have the additional space of each one of those 3 spaces, because think about that. There's going to be a push out of 2 of the 3 spaces, and then an additional tower for that space. Not impossible, but it's going to be a phased, potentially a phased reno, if that's what the board ultimately ends up supporting, if that makes sense. So let's great question. Let's go here. Am I going there? Yes, right there. Back one. So as a group, again, these are estimates. And the thing that gets problematic with estimates, well, you know, if we've heard the term kick the can down the road. We kick the can down the road, these prices are going to only go up. And these are not in-stone prices, but these are some estimates that we think we know right now. As you look at the column that I'm pointing at right now, the recommendation is that to renovate CMS at $58 million with an estimated another 10 for soft costs. May not be that much. Soft costs may not be that much. Maybe more. But you don't have land costs. You do have your A&E costs and all that. The new elementary, $33 million, estimated high there, like Paul did. So I heard that. Thank you, Paul. Estimated high there, but that doesn't include soft costs, and it doesn't include land costs. Because this formula over here would need to have a land cost. And does 650 need to be 700, 725, 750? We have time before there's a decision made that that's what you want to do, is to build a 7th elementary school, okay? The other column is simply a comparison, and we're thinking this. If growth continues, you got the difference between $134 million and $101 million to build elementary school number 8. That is not an unreasonable conversation to have based on what you just commented on. Exactly. So that's a possibility. So We're not saying that's a definite recommendation or a definite prediction, but there's the difference. Thinking about this committee has been thinking about the impact to the county and taxpayers in this process, and certainly they can speak to that, but I absolutely sense that and want to portray that to you today, and these are some things for you to think about. We wanted you to have new information today, see these developments, and I would be remiss if I didn't say, because my colleagues said it, but maybe not loud enough. A lot of these developments are in town, and some of your committee members didn't know these were happening as rapidly as they're happening. Those developments in town are going to impact government services, and one of the most expensive ones that you provide is education. It's hitting us, and they're approving them, and they're coming, and we have to deal with that, as the county has to deal with that. So over here on the other side, new middle school. Efficient, highly efficient, better location, all the above. Yes. It's priced at approximately the same square footage because of trying to attempt to compare apples to apples. New elementary school, kind of same format there, $33 million for 650 students, which would also include adding land, site cost, and that 33 did not include soft costs. Everybody's with me on soft cost, land cost, site cost. 3 different things, right? The land is the land. The site is the prep. You all are talking a lot of road stuff, and with VDOT, site cost, those construction, site includes roads. It can be very, very expensive. So on the right side, what's not there is a number that if this is decided, whatever the $1 million number here is to do this to make it an asset that's still valuable to the county in whatever configuration it is. It's going to cost millions of dollars to do that, to bring something that has the highest FCI, Facility Condition Index, that we have. So all of this aside, if we're going to go get this, we're going to need more than this. Again, land, site, but there's some money that still will have to be spent at CMS, regardless of how it's chosen to be utilized. So my colleagues are here, members of the committee are here. Happy to answer any questions. Appreciate your patience with us today. Thank you, Mr. Underwood, for saying this is a big decision, whatever it is, and as we go forward. But I think it's pretty clear people want to come and move to Culpeper County, live in Culpeper County, raise a family in Culpeper County. And by all accounts, we hear is one of the components of that is because of the school system. Not just us, there are other fine educational offerings to raise children in this county. And we support those as well. But for people to come, if you build it, they'll come, it's going to be an impact to government services. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
I do have a question.
Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
go back one slide, please?
That one?
So
Yes, ma'am.
I kind of see another third option. Not that I'm really for having the new elementary be in the same vicinity as all of our other schools, because I think we do need to look around the outskirts. But what would be the cost to renovate CMS into an elementary and administrative offices? Since we're currently renting all of our administrative offices, how would that look in terms of if we did new middle school, new elementary school as a CMS renovation with our administrative offices compared to renovating CMS, a new elementary school, and new administrative offices?
And you started with what would the cost of that be?
Right.
I have no idea.
Would that be something that we should look into as protecting that asset and being able to remove ourselves from the rental market? I know we had originally put $4 million as what administrative offices would be and found that that's probably not going to be sufficient. But as an alternative option, allowing us to move a middle school into a greater area, would we end up with a better cost over the time than if we did the renovate new elementary and new administrative offices?
To renovate and bring the facility condition index up to par in that facility with whatever you put in there, and then you're going to have to petition and change the flow of that school, not to the point of adding capacity, so you won't have to do that if it's an elementary, understand that. But there's still going to be something with an M behind it, millions of dollars. Then millions of dollars on top of doing a new middle school and an elementary school, even if that's on the same site.
I'm saying for that $68.4 million, can we renovate CMS into a $33 million elementary school and a administrative office and still do a new middle school? Or some other combination that gets us more capacity
but-
closer to where we want to go
Yes,
in
ma'am,
the future?
but you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, the elementary school is in the middle school.
Yeah.
And that doesn't address the outlying areas where you're talking about
yes.
elementary schools. So that.
I agree.
I do
I just
not,
wondered-
I'm just one person, but I do not think an elementary solution is a good idea at the CMS location.
Okay.
I think we need an elementary school out somewhere else
yeah.
in the county
I
for the
agree.
purpose of addressing the growth areas.
Okay.
And because it's there, again, as I said earlier in the conversation, that's the cards we've been dealt. It has that school there. How are we going to use it?
Right.
To bring it up to speed and to increase that capacity at the secondary level, middle school student-wise, that, for the committee, is the best bang for the buck at this moment.
And I totally agree that the elementary, we need a new elementary on the outskirts where the growth is,
And
because
if I may, Rob, I want a picture of the map, tell me when to stop, like that.
Yeah.
So, here you go. Elementary, 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 elementary. High school's kind of heading middle. There's your schools, right? You're going to put the middle somewhere, or a middle elementary combo somewhere, and then put the elementary at the middle school. That's not where your growth is, okay? So, and the committee has thought about that,
Okay.
seriously thought about that. Now, have we run a cost model of something that would look like that? No, because I think really, again, trying to speak for the committee, the recommendation from the committee to the board are these two things. A comprehensive reno, including capacity upgrade to CMS at its current location, and an additional elementary school at a location to be determined to match our growth. But great questions. Thank you.
Dr. Brands, so if we decide to go the new middle school, new elementary, you still keep saying that we're going to have to do renovations on CMS. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know, so it's going to be lower than the 68.4?
I want to go the backwards and forwards, swimming with this, sorry. So somewhere, let's see, yes, here we go. So we would have to bring all of the components that are referenced in the facility condition assessment to include, once you start doing that, you've got to do ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act adjustments. We would have technology adjustments. We need a boiler. We need a chiller. You heard Dr. O'Brien talk about the major systems in there are 46 years old. All of that's going to cost money. You would not need to do these kinds of things where this is an example of one of those push-outs. This is existing space, and the science labs pop out here. And then you do that 2 times, and then you have a new tower. You wouldn't have to do that. Does that cut that reno in half? I can't answer that. But it would be less, yes. But unless you say, we're going to put a new roof on that thing and do nothing else in that building, I would say you can't do that. We have to do something to protect that building.
So
Hope that helped a little.
regardless, we're spending,
Regardless, you're going to spend on CMS.
Correct.
Regardless of how the county decides to best utilize that facility, you're going to spend some money on it. Are you going to spend $58 million with how much on? No, you're not. But then you need a middle school somewhere. And the committee said, wait a minute, the middle school somewhere is $100 million. Ish. No land.
Dr. Brads?
Yes, sir.
When you talk $100 million, let's just be clear. First off, I feel that time is of the essence. And my hat's off to Dr. Harmon, Dr. Bryan, Mr. Shomo, Mr. Robson. I'm a show me kind of person. They've taken me out and shown me that the mechanicals in CMS. Dr. Harmon has gone out and physically visited these sites where there's concrete being poured. This is not something that we've got a lot of time. And when we go back to 2017, 2018, when I was on the Planning Commission, and I took a tour of CMS back then, it was an urgent matter then. So we have kicked this can down the road for 5 years. It has cost the taxpayers of Culpeper County $17 million from 41 to 58. And I can assure you, I'm not a contractor, but I can assure you that price is not coming down. Now, if we want to derail this project and continue the what-ifs and this, where are we going to put it and so on, we can anticipate another $2 to $3 million a year for every year this thing's kicked down the road. We're talking, I get it, an ideal situation of putting a new middle school somewhere, but out of this $101 million, we have just been talking about $14 million in your district and Cedar Mountain District on roads. We haven't said anything about roads getting to these schools, okay? We've made this bed, okay? This low tax rate that Mr. Chairman's speaking of, that is a driver for why people are coming to Culpeper County, okay? Like it or not, that's why they're coming here, and this is the result that we have to deal with. So believe you me, when we talk about the wow moment, I get it, and I am 100% on pinching every penny that we can when it comes to developing or building a new elementary school or this renovation. The conversation has been, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Brads, we are not going to go on homage to Culpeper County school system by building this one-off elementary. We're going to use a boilerplate, and I think the comment was, you're welcome to change the color, whatever you want to paint it. So that being said, I think we are being very good stewards of the taxpayer dollar when we look at what we're faced with. And you summed it up. These are the cards that we've been dealt. So if we talk about the middle school, you want to put elementary students in there, I can promise you the traffic debacle that we have now is going to be compounded tenfold by students being dropped off by their parents. And I don't like it any more than anybody else here, but I mean, we are where we are. And I don't, granted, if we could do this thing for 30 million and everybody be happy, I don't think that's going to happen, but we are where we are. So, I just don't want to see us get derailed. If we pulled the trigger on this today, it's going to be 3 years before realistically, I would say 2 to 3 years before we're even midstream. Is that a fair assessment?
Aggressively, you're looking at bid documents in March, April of next year, bid documents.
That's my concern, and I disagree. I agree with you, Mr. Bates, and that I think everyone up here agrees with you that we're going to support this, okay? No. Well, maybe, I know.
I'm not sure a majority does.
Supervisor Underwood, I know he really wants a new middle school. But what I'm saying is the timeline, wherever we go with that. But the timeline to me, and you said time is of the essence, and I agree with that because I think the timeline is going to work out. But we've been planning for this for 5, 6, 7 years based on our technology initiative to where we've been trying to attract data centers to help us with these costs to carry the debt load for these schools. And I'll throw in fire and rescue, volunteer fire department too. We want to help them. So Amazon is getting ready to break ground. And I know that it's projected, we don't know what the tax revenue coming in for Amazon will be. It could be 3 million, it could be 8 million, it could be 10. We don't know yet. But we projected 5 to 7 million, I think. And the debt load that Valerie gave us a couple years ago, I think it was $3 million for 20 years, tax revenue coming in for Equinix, or I think would carry that debt load. So we need to go forward with this, but like you said a second ago, 3 years. If we can manage to defer for 3 years before we have to ratify any debt load, or 2 years to where Amazon can get in place, build their building, within a year and be in operation mode within a year to where we can see that tax revenue come in, I think it would really help support and supplement this initiative. These needs, these are critical needs. I agree with that. But I'm hoping that we can go through the preliminary engineering part, the architecturals, et cetera, and work all this out. I'm hoping it's going to take a couple years to do that so we can have that supplemental tax revenue coming in that we've been planning for this moment.
Mr. Deal, I'm not sure if there was, I appreciate the statement, I'm not sure if there was a question in there, but I would be remiss if I didn't address 2 to 3 years. Whatever the board decides, whatever direction, new middle school, renovate the middle school and elementary, we need to do that rapidly in terms of getting bid documents out, getting a price out there. And if it takes time to do the financing, that's one thing. But the more we talk about this and the longer we wait to put out a bid document, you heard earlier today about a bid coming in high, right? All of this is speculation until we bid it. And if you're saying, well, we're going to, no disrespect, but if we're going to wait for, I mean, maybe you're not saying it that way, but if we wait 2 to 3 years to bid it, then it's going to cost more 2 to 3 years later.
You
To
just
start-
said, you
start
just
the
said
process.
it, you just said it a second ago, Dr. Brad.
No, I said that.
You said, somebody said 3 years, 2 or 3 years. I'm saying.
To get in it,
I'm
to
saying
be in it, yes, sir.
Mr. Howard's going to take his time to go ahead and get the preliminary engineering started, get the design started, the architecturals. That's going to take a while. It's going to take a while for us to come to a decision up here on the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve here. We've already seen that. So what I'm saying is I'm hoping it's going to be a couple years, or a year and a half or 2, before we are ready to ratify that financing part of these projects to where we can get that technology money coming in to where our taxes, our citizens that are out there that are struggling, that you don't have to think about, but we do. We have to think about your needs. You're doing your job, lobbying for what the needs are of the county from the education standpoint. We're with you. But we also have to worry about tax hikes and people out there that are struggling that, you know, if we have to raise the taxes, 8 or 10 cents, the rates their taxes going up every year. That's going to affect their lives as well. So we're kind of on both ends of the equation here.
Mr. Deal, if I could just comment to that, and I may have misspoke, and there's only one supervisor here, and, well, I take that back. Tom, I guess you were here on the Eastern View portion of it. But I have said this since I've been on the board on how slow the wheels of government turn. And I did not intend to say that I want to put this thing off because, again, time is of the essence. And if we look at page 25, or that chart on the capacity of these schools, I don't really think that we have the luxury to kick this down the road another 3 years, which, based off of previous estimates, that's another $6 to $7 million that this thing's going to go up. The county, and Ms. Lamb has alluded to that at the last financial report, our county is in very good financial health. And I don't think that carrying a debt service for 1 to 2 years until some of these other components that you speak of, technology, I don't think that's going to put us in harm's way moving forward with this. And I ideally would like to see us kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit, and then based off of what Mr. Underwood and Ms. Gugino have brought up, going forward with the next schools, that we have the opportunity to strategically place these schools to where it's going to, where you feel is going to better serve. The conversation has come up, Dr. O'Brien has talked about the transportation from Richardsville, but you have a handful of students down there that are having to make these long bus rides. We cannot change the entire school layout for a handful of students. We need to further look into how we're going to transport these students and get them to the schools in a timely fashion. But just to be clear, for the record, I did not mean that we were going to put this off for 2 to 3 years. But I'm saying if we started on this today, when could we envision opening the textbook in a renovated and a new elementary school? That was my intent.
Mr. Chairman, as a member of the Joint Planning Committee, I will say that the school system, Dr. Brad's, his staff, did a very good job of giving us the alternatives and looking at the situation that we were currently in. We have to address the middle school. It is a building that's there. We can walk away from it. What are we going to do, let it fall down? No. If we don't use it, we've got to tear it down. That's going to cost millions of dollars. I think the plan that's been put forth here today looks at the tax impact and looks at it as favorably as you possibly can. $100 million is a lot of money. That's a wow moment. But if we don't decide what we want to do and pick a path to move forward, that $100 million is going to be $120 million. And we're not approving $100 million today, I don't think. I think what we need to do is approve a plan. And we need to, I'm going to actually recommend and move that we support the plan as presented here today to direct staff from the county and the school system to develop bids, proposals, and come back with more concrete information.
For the renovation and new elementary school.
Relative to the renovation of Culpeper Middle School and building a new elementary school.
If that was an official motion, I second that.
That's your motion? Well, I'll second that. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Mr. Chairman, this is a once-in-a-generation decision. We're making a decision that will impact literally 25-plus years, definition of a generation. And when the decision was made for Culpeper Middle School back in the mid-'70s, traffic, I believe Mr. Bates may have gone to the first year there, traffic was very different then. 29 had just moved out away from the town. When Floyd T. Benz was built, it was less than a mile from 29, because 29 went through town. A lot of stuff has changed. There's a definition in economics called sunk costs. And what that means is you look at things going forward, you look at them with incremental benefit of where things are, but not based upon your prior decisions, and assuming you must go with that asset. A few things. One, I believe the motion, frankly, is premature in the sense that I haven't even read the study, so be able to say yes or no, even if I wanted to go for it, I'm unprepared. So with that, I would make a motion that we actually table it until the board has a chance to be prepared.
Well, I think we have to address the first motion first.
Roberts?
Well, that's true. You haven't got a second. No second yet? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on two motions. The first motion will have to be addressed first. I support the first motion.
No.
Should it?
Yes, that's Robert's rules.
Oh, okay. All right, so the second motion. We'll address the second motion first.
And the reason I'm going this route is I'm more in favor with the new middle school and the new elementary, especially since we're going to have to be renovating CMS. So I do think that we need to look at a little bit more homework and see exactly what we got going on here.
One of your comments was we need to look at sunk costs, and do you abandon something with a sunk cost? I don't think Culpeper Middle School is an obsolete facility. And as we look at the engineer surveys and we look at the people who lay out schools, they will tell you that this is a facility that for $58 million and maybe $68 million can be turned into a viable state-of-the-art middle school. The alternative to that is $100 million plus land, plus site cost, plus. That is not a real hard equation in my mind. And like I said, I don't believe sunk cost is applicable here.
I'd look forward to learning more and having much more discussion about it, because it is literally a once-in-a-generation decision. For me to assume that we're going to renovate the middle school without doing logistical studies of transportation patterns, when we're talking more than $50 million, to ask us to support a direction without even reading the report as to say what should happen, seems a little premature. And in terms of I think from transportation, from what I know, more than half of this county commutes north. And a lot of them use Highway 29. We made a decision to put a new high school along 29 quite a while ago that has been very well received. When you look at where the elementary schools are, at least for the Salem district, there is less of a problem for a lot of it. Now, there are some problems in that Boston, they have them go to AG, whereas if Boston had to go to Yale, it would go the same path as to how they get north. So there are challenges there, but outside of that, for all the others that use 29 to go north, or a large part, AG is well located. Eastern View is well located. If we're making a decision to say, okay, we're going to have 2 middle schools in a 366 square mile county that are located within 1 mile of each other and that are located more than 3 miles from our primary arterial, and this decision is impacting us 15 years from now, because we're not going to have another school or be considering another middle school 10, 15 years from now, there's a lot to consider. And to say yes, yay, let's go forward now, let's socialize this a little in the community.
I'd like to add to that, to comment to that we've known about this since 2017. Okay, this is not some new revelation that just came about in 2023. That said, if we don't get a grasp on the growth in Culpeper, you're probably going to get your chance to build a middle school and another elementary school outside of that 1 mile area that you're speaking of, because this is not something that we have the luxury, again, of pushing off for another 5 years.
This board creates the growth, other than the growth created by town council. And what I mean, they didn't even consider the growth in A1 and RA, which is what the Salem district is. And if you looked at the numbers, they said the one school that isn't going over capacity is AG, which is Salem district. So when we approve rezonings, like the ones that, now admittedly, only one of us was here when Clevenger's was approved and did not support it, but still, a earlier version of this board has created the path for the growth that we have now. That said, the growth is where it is, and to look at the patterns, and I've not been trying to delay. I've been in support of a new middle school openly for more than 3 years, and I have asked for concerns about transportation openly over that whole period. So it isn't like I'm springing this on everyone today. And to look at it and consider it when making a decision that will impact us a generation, hopefully we would do that.
Well, I'll just say that I know how hard the committees work, and I know I've talked to Supervisor Bates and Supervisor Durr about it a lot. I don't have any problem going forward with the plan. I mean, and having staff evaluate the plan and present something to us going forward. You know, four of the main disciplines I think up here that we're responsible for and accountable for, first is public safety, of course, and then education, and then the tax rates and economic development. And I think the last three, the education, the tax rates, and economic development are interrelated right now. And that's why I would like to see us take our time, go through the preliminary engineering process, go through the architecturals, the design, and take our time to where we can have those technology businesses come to the community and supplement what the debt load is going to be. That's important to me, which I think we're on the right path, because I think it is going to take several years to get to the point to where we do enter into the financing part of it. But I'm fine with the plan. I just would like to slow down a little bit. I fully support the schools, of course, and I think what you've laid out is fact, and I think we do need to go forward with the projects.
So do you support the table?
No, I support Supervisor Durr's motion. We got to do the first motion first. So any other discussion before we go to the second motion and second motion that was made? All right, so on Supervisor Underwood's motion that was seconded by Supervisor Campbell. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And raise your hands, please. All opposed, please raise your hands. Okay. Ms. Ellis, do you have that? Okay. So on the first motion that was made by Supervisor Durr, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye, and please raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. Deputy Ellis, do you have that? Okay. All right. Any other comments before we go forward? Thank you, Dr. Brads. And I failed to recognize some of the school board members that were here today. Thank you for being here. School board member Elizabeth Hutchins, Betsy Howard, Pat Baker, and Chrissy Burnett. Thank you for being here today. Okay, Economic Development Director's Report, Brian Rothamel.
Good morning, Board. I want to talk to you about the Be a Culpeper Local Week. That'll be coming up. This is from our strategic plan, Goal 2.1, strengthen Be a Culpeper Local's reach. And one of the objectives was to continue Be a Culpeper Local Week. It'll start next weekend, August 5th through August 13th. For the businesses, participation is free. We will provide canvas bags for retail participants, so as customers come in and shop and they purchase something, they will get a canvas bag to take home. We also have non-retail businesses participating this year that we're very excited for. So customers or clients who shop and utilize 5 businesses, they return their punch card and they get a free Choose Culpeper t-shirt. Throughout the week, we will be highlighting the businesses, including the promotions and the special business spotlights that they are asking for. And businesses can still sign up. We have over 38 businesses currently signed up to participate. It is on our website. I typed the wrong website. I apologize for that. It's at beaculpeperlocal.com/BACLweek. Where you can see that. And we will be rolling out the promotions on Facebook starting today. This was last year's great time. And that's all I have for you this month.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Administrator's Report, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to share some happy news with you today. I think you're all aware that Andrew Lawson is retiring as of September 1st as our Director of Criminal Justice Services. And Joe, if you would stand up, I wanted to introduce you to Joe Kuntz. Joe has an associate's degree in criminology, law, and society. He also has a master's degree in criminal justice, public administration from Liberty University. Joe's worked with our Department of Criminal Justice Services since 2017. He's been the Deputy Director for just over a year, and Joe did also spend some time in our E911 Operations Center. So we're thrilled to have Joe get this promotion. He's ready to take over, and it'll be a seamless process in that department for us, I believe.
Keep the ship sailing. Yes, sir.
Congratulations,
Thank
Joe.
you. I appreciate it. Look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, closed session. Entertain a motion to go in closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into closed meeting as permitted under Virginia Code Section 2.23711A3, 6, 8, and 29 to discuss and consider, 1, the award of public contract hauling services involving the expenditure of public funds and/or the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county/board. And 2, to receive legal advice regarding the potential options, limitations, and liability considerations as to the legal structuring of a jail facility as detailed in the Code of Virginia, the Virginia Administrative Code, and under under other applicable law, and to discuss and consider the acquisition of real property, a jail facility, the award of a public contract, and the investment of public funds therein, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the financial interest, bargaining position, and negotiating strategy of the board if made public initially.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, we're in closed session. Thank you all for coming today.